Good evening and welcome to Press Pass. Apologies for starting a bit late. I should probably have an episode on how bulletins go over their time and how they should keep time, especially for you, the viewer who's waiting for the programs that you love, such as Press Pass. I'm just messing about. My name is Mark Masai. Here's what's coming up.
You cannot work in a media house at the same time, be able to, support or to work for for a political party.
The scribes who are working for politicians and newsrooms at the same time.
I'm particularly grateful because you also have this rare opportunity to see me in person.
This was 2013. You'll see why they were laughing. On a related issue, we look at that breakfast meeting that just keeps haunting editors in our newsrooms.
Vile nilisema ya kwamba gazeti ni ya kufunga nyama ni sawa.
Not much love for the newspapers, but lots of love for meat. Kenya Ajui gives his view on the latest obsession of meat by our politicians. Let me take you through my panel here. This evening, I'm pleased to have for the first time Marceline Nyambala. She is the Executive Director at AMWIC, that is the Association of Media Women in Kenya. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mark Masai, for having us. Thank you very much.
All right, and the gentleman will be kind, I'm sure. Hassan Kulundu, he's been here a few times. Thank you, sir, for joining us this evening. He is the Secretary, Assistant Secretary at the Editors Guild, a veteran journalist. He has enough time here to share about what his experience has been in media. And next to him, Eric Odwor. He is the Secretary General of the Kenya Union of Journalists, also writes and works for the East African. Thank you for your time tonight. And we have Charles Kerich. He is the Managing Editor for the Star newspaper and also recently appointed the chair of the Media Council Board. Congratulations for that appointment.
Thank you.
Probably something to do with your appearance on Press Pass enough times. So thank you for coming on. And David Ohito, he hasn't been on for a while. Thank you for coming back on. He's a digital editor at the Standard Media Group and also the special programs person at the Editors Guild, and he has his experience in the media for years. So let's set the ground here with some context. Journalists who have declared interest to vie for elective positions will have their accreditation revoked by the Media Council of Kenya. On Wednesday last week, MCK said such journalists' work cannot be considered credible and fair because of conflict of interest. Sharon Baranga filed this report.
For any objective reportage on elections, a country needs a fourth estate that is not compromised. And it is this that the Media Council of Kenya is trying to achieve ahead of the 2017, and it is this that the Media Council of Kenya is trying to achieve ahead of the 2017 general election. Today, the council has threatened to revoke accreditation of those journalists who have expressed interest in vying for elective posts.
The important thing is to differentiate so that somebody knows that this person has written his personal opinion, which is biased, and you will take it for its face value. But not to pretend then that you are an impartial person.
You cannot work in a media house at the same time, be able to support or to work for for a political party.
I'm sure you've all seen campaign posters being circulated. Some of our colleagues have, declared that they are going to run for specific seats in specific parties. And those are the kind of people that we are saying that it might then be difficult for them to continue operating in the newsroom.
Social media was also named as one of the platforms that some journalists express biased opinions. As such, media houses that do not have policies guiding the use of social media have been implored to develop them.
While journalists, like all other citizens, have rights to be active on social media and by extension enjoy freedom of expression, they should draw the line between personal opinion in their private space and their walls and the views that suggest that the journalist is biased.
The Media Council is now giving this pledge to journalists.
The council will work with relevant offices, including the ODPP, the DCI, IPOA, and others, to ensure that perpetrators of crimes against media practitioners are dealt with.
Well, the Council's pledge comes at a time when a number of journalists have been assaulted in their line of duty. While others have lost equipments, others have had to pay the ultimate price, that of losing their lives in their quest to tell stories. Sharon Baranga, NTV, Nairobi.
So that is what will be forming the basis of our conversation tonight. I'll start with Marceline. You've been taking some notes as you were watching that piece, and I'm sure you've been following this development in terms of the reactions. Your first reaction, initial reactions when you saw this particular presser that was called by the Media Council.
Thank you, Mark. For me, what I would say is that the journalists also have a right to participate politically, and an impression should not be created that or to criminalize or stigmatize that when journalists want to go and vie,
right,
or to give the impression to the public that journalists should remain in the newsroom and not politically participate. But having said that, of course, there is a level in which when you are in the newsroom, you may have some advantage over others. But what perhaps our colleagues at the Media Council would have done is perhaps to convene us as stakeholders, then we begin to think through it and say, what are the guidelines? Because right, according to the Elections Act, as well as the Political Parties Act, civil servants are to resign 6 months before the elections. Mm-hmm. And therefore, there should be something that it should not only be journalists who need to resign earlier, because again, they have also a right to earn their income. And so we have to have a way and find a middle ground. What is the middle ground? Whereby we don't seem to be discriminating them, but we also ensure that they remain independent as journalists. And so what are these things that they need to do to appear to be independent? Perhaps is to say that in your area where you're vying, you should not cover it. You should not cover your candidates. Right. Those are some of the suggestions.
All right, we'll get to the suggestions, but let's get to clarity on what this meant, at least from the Media Council. Charles Kerich, you were there, and you said, we can't pretend to be objective whilst we are interested in a political position. But let's clarify, does this mean journalists should not show interest in politics in terms of running for office? Let's clarify this, at least for those who probably misunderstood. Right.
In fact, we need more journalists in Parliament. When we were having the Kika debate, we realized how deficient we were and how there was nobody to champion our cause. But we issued a statement that we issued. We got very many people supporting that position. We got very many people opposing that position. For those who gave constructive criticism, we listened. For those who are born to be natural cynics, and therefore their entire feedback is just sarcasm, we did not have time for that. Okay. But the good thing is that in the last 2 weeks, I think there has been discussion in the media, by the media, about the media, than there has been in a very long time. Okay. There has been a lot of discussion going on about the merits and demerits of the statement and the positions that are being taken. And for me, I think it is a very good thing that has happened, that we are having these discussions.
Yeah. Okay, very good thing, but I'm sure there are people who are saying, I need clarification on this. As a representative of the Kenya Union of Journalists, for all the journalists that you represent, how did you receive this as Secretary General?
Yeah, of course, when I received this news, what I did first thing was to tell journalists to ignore that statement. To ignore that statement. And I still believe, because so that they don't take that statement very seriously. And I believe that right now what the Media Council can do is, first of all, to withdraw that statement, convene a stakeholders forum whereby we can have discussions and come up with a clear framework how we are going to deal with the issues of impartiality in the media. Because having read even the various editorial policies of different media houses in different parts of this world, you'll see that I've never seen where journalists are being denied the right to take part in a political activity.
Okay.
Even if you look at our constitution, Article 38 states that every Kenyan has got a right to participate in any political process, be it belonging to a political party, forming one, or being recruited to a political party. And therefore, even if you read other editorial policies, they state very clearly that when a journalist wants to take part in a political activity, this journalist must be very careful so that you do not compromise your credibility and integrity as a journalist. So that's what I expected that the Media Council should have done, wider consultation. So by the time you come up with such guidelines, it's a guideline that actually also provides that transition. I know, like Marceline has said that for civil servants, you've got 6 months to leave office, and even right now has been stated very clearly that come February next year, any civil servants who wants to participate in should resign by then. But for here, the Media Council wants journalists sacked. You know, if you hear somebody actually urging the media houses that you sack those people, does it mean that now the Media Council has now become an employer of journalists or a prefect of journalists for that matter?
Well, they say they are the regulator, so...
If I may just clarify, you know, there are two issues involved here. There is the issue of the journalist who wants to contest for a seat, and there is the issue of a journalist who is partisan, affiliated to a party, doing the bidding of a party, promoting that party every day. The journalist who wants to contest for a political seat and declare so openly is welcome. At the right time, he will exit. Mm-hmm. But the person who is then pretending that they are not interested in a seat, but you can see every day that they are very partisan, and you start asking yourself, can this person be relied upon to be objective?
Okay.
It is the same as if somebody begins to get the feeling, I have got very many comments that these people you have here, particularly these 2 or 3, are very partisan, and they will never write anything objective about this other party. And to me, it feels like if you walk into Central Police Station and you find the policeman in uniform, and he has a badge here written ODM or KANU, what goes through your mind? Is this somebody you can trust? You think they are professional enough? So journalism is not like architecture or engineering, where you can have a political party and still build your building. This is a profession that is founded on trust.
I see a smirk on David Ohito's face, but there's a reason why I haven't asked him yet. Hassan Kulundu, as you hear this conversation, is it a good thing in light of objectivity and impartiality for journalists?
Pretty good, yes, Mark. 2 things first. First of all, I'm not sure, I've not heard the leadership of the Media Council say that they are themselves from their own mouth, saying that they are going to withdraw accreditation of journalists who have delved into politics, apart from what the voiceover was saying. Nonetheless, if that's what they have in mind, then I can tell them that that's a failure to understand the law that actually has created them. Mm-hmm. Look at the Media Council Act, which is the principal statute that establishes and gives powers to the council. The council cannot purport to exercise powers it does not have. Withdrawal of accreditation is a punishment for certain offenses under the Act. And participating in politics is not one of those acts that can attract punishment with regard to withdrawal of accreditation under the Act. So I think the leadership of the council should go back and read to know where the boundaries of their powers are. Nonetheless, I agree with them on an issue of a matter of professional ethics, what we call equity. Put aside the law. This is what we call equity. Surely, if you are a journalist, you occupy a very important position. And let me speak from the perspective of editors, because editors are the gatekeepers. All of us know that what goes into the media, what the people consume out there, is what editors have decided to go in. So it will be very unfair for you to be the editor, you are the gatekeeper, you are the watchdog, then you are also that partisan. That's very unfair. As a matter of professional ethics, you should not be able to participate in politics at the same time purport to be a watchdog and gatekeeper for an institution that is based on trust.
All right, I can't go for a break before engaging Ohito here. Now, you've heard about journalists or people in media whose posters have done the rounds. just to clarify, are you, as David Ohito, anticipating or interested in running for office? And if anything, clarify what has been doing the rounds on social media.
Very interesting question, Mark Masai. But I'm glad you've had me here. And I really agree with the sentiments of my colleagues here discussing these very pertinent issues. We are going to an election. We are only 10 months away from an election, and the coverage should give the consumers, the audiences, the best of the candidates.
Right.
One, I am a political analyst and I am a journalist. For the time being, I'm the editor, Standard Digital. Yours truly in defense of freedom of media and media space. For this time, I still hold that fort. However, there are people who have beckoned me, who have made my posters, who have chosen a party for me, and I'm still listening to them. When the right time comes, I will make my own decision and let the country know. In any case, this is a good brain enough to be where the best brains should be. Two.
So you're going into politics?
No, I have been covering politics for the last 21 years. I have been inside politics. I've been in the National Assembly as a political reporter from the gallery. I have been there before, so I've been covering politics. What I'm saying is that I'm still a journalist doing my job, and I do it professionally. And I will continue doing that until maybe I am convinced with the beckoning of my constituents. And when the time comes, I'll be right there to listen to their voices.
What has the beckoning been for those who haven't seen what has been circulating? What has the beckoning been? Now that it's clear, it's people who have spoken, not you who's
the people have spoken. My family hasn't spoken. I haven't spoken. I am listening. If I recall, there was a gentleman who was very good in politics. He was called William Odongo Omamo. God rest his soul. He used to say, people were saying, kuri, 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 kuri. I'm still listening, like Omamo was listening. When the right time comes, I shall perch at the right place.
All right. Thank you very much for that clarification. But this discussion hasn't ended. We're continuing this conversation because there's the call. Its edict, at least as of last week, and questions over the guidelines and suggestions that stakeholders need to actually contribute in terms of the journalists in politics and their involvement, whether directly or bipartisan. Stay with Press Pass. I'm back in a moment. Welcome back. We're discussing the involvement of journalists in politics, whether directly running for office or partisan, that is supporting either side of the political divide. And in fact, over the break, David Ohito, you were echoing that concern, that it's better the person who comes out and says, I'm actually going to run for office.
Yes, we know we are in the business of truth and accuracy. It's better to lay it on the table than to hide that you do not belong to any party. And I was saying, God forbid, if there was any vetting of reporters and editors, and we were to declare our M-Pesa accounts, some of us would go under the same day. Right. And for the record, I want to say that I was a very disturbed man when the Media Council made this announcement, because there's a lot of information. The media has changed and keeps evolving, and with the dynamism, especially in the digital space, it's almost impossible to ask anybody to go home. If Mark Masai's Press Pass show gives NTV those beautiful ratings, even if he declared he was running for a seat in Kamkunji, for example, I would hold on to him until the last campaign day so that I keep making my profits and I keep more eyeballs on my TV. Right. That should be the argument we should be having. And two, there are lots of good practices. I was reading a lot when this statement was made, and I said, I think if this is going to be our regulator, then this country is going to be, this profession is going to be in a lot of problem. If you look at CNN, there are gentlemen who have anchored and left the newsroom and were elected mayor, same in Canada, same in UK. Why would you want to apply these draconian rules? In fact, my good friend Kerich, who I have a lot of respect for, sounded like a Kanu politician of the 1980s. And I was very worried. And I said, I thought Harun Mwangi went to school at some point. And that
Dr. Harun Mwangi.
Yes. I thought he must have gone to school. And I thought there must be some lawyer employed by Media Council to guide them on what to say.
Right.
The articles of the constitutions are very clear. Article 4, Bill of Rights. You cannot deny a journalist his right just because he's writing articles. Article 38, the right to participate in politics is very enshrined. No amount of law can be ordered by some small pseudo-regulator called Media Council to deny the journalist his right to run for politics.
Kirich, before Eric Odor jumps in, just to manage the skepticism, in terms of the opinion out there, one here expressed, Kadara says, shouldn't we be worried when the state, through the Media Council, dictates who can and cannot practice journalism? Just clarify on such doubts and concerns.
Well, Kadara's comment is based on a fallacy. He's assuming that it is the state that is directing. The Media Council works independently. We saw when we issued the statement, people saying there had been a war between PSCU directors and some journalists, and journalists, yes. When they lost the war, now the Media Council came in. I mean, that really is not a fact. And, you know, I think Kulundu really captured the essence of what we were saying, that if you are in a gatekeeping position, you cannot use it to try and push partisan views or stifle other views. Right. If you're a journalist covering netball or volleyball and you want to run to be the MP for Garbatula, where is the problem? There's no conflict.
So when a political analyst?
If you're in a position where you can influence, because there is fairness and independence, and people are saying there is no issue of independence here, it's about balance. I have asked both sides of the story. But if today I ask you, Mark, are you still a thief? And you say, what do you say? If you say, no, I'm no longer a thief, it means you were once a thief. Or you say, yes, it means you still are. And then you say, okay, Mark Masai has denied that he's a thief. He was responding to comments by his neighbor. That story is balanced. But is it fair? Is it independent? Is it objective? These things don't work in isolation. You don't pick one issue and say it is just an issue of balance. They must work in concert and in harmony. Right. And therefore, the issue of saying that so long as it is balanced, it doesn't arise.
I think, Mark, let me respond to what Ohito said. It's good to say that the law allows you, right? Let me give you an example, what we mean by equity. There's a time, I think there was a magistrate sometime somewhere in Nyeri who found a granny of around 90 or 80 years in contempt of court, all right? Then she was supposed to go to Kingongo to be jailed. You see, the law being blind, ideally she should have gone to jail. But you see, there was uproar. Kenyans were saying that, how would you take such a granny to Kingongo prison? What would you expect to achieve by jailing her? So that's what we call equity. Fine, the law can tell you this, the letter of the law. But the reason why we have got equity is to balance out how reasonable is that. So for Ohito, you might have the law saying that you have got the right to do that, okay? But here you are in another position as a journalist. So for instance, Ohito is a very senior editor, and he makes a lot of decisions on what goes in on the online edition that he is the head of. Now, assuming that the way you have been kuried to say that and a certain party is willing to sponsor you. But while you are still in that position, still thinking about it, that party wants to sponsor you. Then information comes. How do you start dealing with this particular party? Right. You will certainly start giving it good coverage at the expense of the other, whatever. That's why we are saying that as a matter of professional ethics and equity, you cannot declare have those kind of interests and still continue occupying that position.
I think, Mark, the debate, I agree with Karich that over the past 1 week, you had a healthy debate around these issues. And I'm happy that right now the Media Council is now toning down and actually now seeing the sense in some of the things that we were saying. Because if you look at the statement, they made it very clearly that the journalists who have political inclinations, the journalists who have already declared their interests should be sacked by those media houses they work for. Now I think I now agree with him when he says that whenever there is a conflict of interest like other countries do or other media houses do elsewhere, what they do, if there is a conflict of interest, they move you from that bit where you've got a conflict of interest and take it to another bit. Like he was using the example of netball. So we could have now advised the standard group that if they have issues or Ohito has declared interest or people are curried him to go and vie, then he should have advised standard to make sure that they now move Ohito to an area where there is no conflict of interest. I think that is understandable, but now telling the media house that this journalist should be sacked and they should leave newsroom, I don't think that was fair enough.
No, I think, Eric, there's one thing you understand. Trying to move somebody from one position to the other, I think that one is what we call musical chairs. It's like reshuffling, rearranging chairs on the deck of the Titanic. The ship still sank. It does not matter where your seat was moved to. Because even if you moved David to a different position, isn't it? This man is an editor. He has got influence on those desks. You remember the case. So Mark, just to bring the thing into perspective. Yes. You remember the issue that happened in Tony Blair's former director of communication, Alistair Campbell. This man was a very powerful. He was a very senior editor, but even when he was out of the newsroom, he managed to influence the intelligence to change an intelligence report to make the case for the Iraq war. And you saw the disaster that he did. Right now, it is being told that Tony Blair should be charged for taking UK to a war that was illegal. And it was all because of Alistair Campbell. He used his influence to tell media houses, especially the Daily Mirror where he worked before, to go with the story that Saddam Hussein was having
you see, Mark, I need to give Marceline first an opportunity to respond to what we're saying here, because the conversation is that even though you move them to another beat, but Mr. Hassan says even though you move them, they still have some influence within the organization.
Yeah, for me, like I maintain that we need a balance. We need a balance because we cannot just stand up and say that let that person exit. And we see instances where even lawyers and judges declare conflict of interest. And it doesn't mean that once they do that, then they move out of the judiciary. It means that there has to be some rearrangements to be made. That person themselves has to also have a mindset to ensure that at least whatever they're going to do, they're at least not in conflict. Yeah. And I said, for us, the important thing is for us to define. Right now, as we speak, Media Council does not have an instrument, a thermometer, or a way to measure that this journalist has exceeded the level of objectivity. But if we have a way in which we can say, this is what a person needs to do, because they don't need to be denied their means of earning a living. Yeah. We need to find a middle ground. And we like I said, we don't want to create an impression that even as that person goes to the ground, then the communities tell you that, no, you're a journalist, you're not supposed to stand. Yes. But we want to create a situation in which we have some clear guidelines that this is what we are saying. If you declare this is 10 months, how should David Ohito or all those other candidates behave? But yes, I agree that when you are there in the newsroom, by virtue of your influence, and I agree with Kulundu, by virtue of being a gatekeeper, you may have some influence, you may have more advantage over your competitors. You may have a chance to promote your party, you may have a chance to suppress another party, and so there is a way in which we must guide how a person should operate. But remember, it is a short period, it's 4 months. What should happen within these 4 months? And because now he has to be accountable. So just by this conversation, and I like that Media Council, perhaps this was the best way for them to do it, because when they did that, it has generated a lot of debate. But if they called us quietly, then maybe they would not harvest as much feedback as is coming up based on the approach that they took.
Perhaps this was a strategy. Eric, sorry to cut you short. My director is telling me I have to take a break. But when we come back, we'll continue uninterrupted because we have to take breaks just before 11, 2 breaks at least. And now when we come back, we'll have the full response, at least on what she has raised, the guidelines, and even Ohito, his intention and strategy of how to remain objective. Welcome back to Press Pass. We're talking about journalists in politics, and at least if there are any guidelines to guide this particular involvement, especially as we're moving into an election year. And this conversation, I hope, will also go into whether we are at a place where we're mature enough, and David Ohito, we were talking about this earlier, to have a journalist or even actually a newsroom say we are behind this particular party based on their policies and their stands as a party. But there's something that Charles Kerich brought out, and I'd like to ask this because many are asking the same. Why now? Why this? Why now? Because everyone thinks there's pressure from above to really try to tame some journalists. And if you know that there's some, why aren't you able to name them and perhaps not name and shame, but call them out and ask them to act professional, ethical as you would have it?
We considered having a one-on-one with some of these people. As you have heard rightly, Mr. David Hito has just said, let the people decide. Actually, that poster was not even made by me. And that, for that reason, that is why we do not name people. I mean, this is not a witch hunt. We are raising an issue. We want a discussion around it. We have many, many other issues that the Media Council has to tackle. Remember, we are having our inauguration of the council on Thursday. And those are the issues that we are going to lay out. This is not the top of the priority of the Media Council. It's just that people are saying, then, of all the issues you have, why are you addressing this particular one?
Yes.
But if you have 26 issues you want to address and you start with issue number 17, where is the problem? You have a target that you want to achieve by the end of your 3-year term. And for me, this was just an issue that was topical because it had been doing a lot of rounds, and we see it every day, and we're having conversations about it every day. And then suddenly when you raise it, then people say, no. Why have you even brought up that issue? It's as if people are blind. They have seen it before. Did anybody have an opinion before this about what is happening in our newsrooms, about the journalists that are putting their party propaganda on their Facebook on a daily basis? And when you ask, they say, look, have you detected anything in my story that sounds like I am biased? But if people in the opposition, for example, say, whatever you write on your Facebook is the same thing we end up seeing in the newspaper, then surely that is an issue that has to be addressed. It is timely.
Ohito, you're the editor for digital for the digital spheres at least, and you're very much so on the interwebs a lot. And that particular rule about controlling what a journalist says on their online platforms as to what they will write either on the paper or broadcast on whichever media. Do you agree with this? And are there suggestions in really making this a better rule?
Yes, there must be a very clear distinction when I post as David Ohito, the private citizen, and David Ohito, an employee of the Standard Media Group and an editor for that matter. And this calls for very strong social media policies within media houses. Big media houses have their social media policies. Nation has, Standard has, Royal Media.
And what are they like at Standard? What do they say about if Mark Masai is at Standard, he shouldn't or should?
That your personal views should not in any way confuse the audiences with your professional views. There must be clear demarcation, and which is why you see on some Twitter accounts, the guys put a disclaimer that the things I express here are not part of the decisions or position points of the Standard Media Group. That should be very clear. And any journalist who has gone to school and wants to live in this era must clarify whether you're posting as an individual or supporting a party as an individual, which is your basic right, and doing so as a journalist, because it then brings in the conflict of interest that we've been talking about.
Yes.
Yeah.
But how do you control this then? If someone would openly say, no, this is my personal opinion as a citizen, and this was my formal opinion or position, whatever I posted here as an employee of Nation Media Group.
Well, to begin with, I think the primary responsibility lies with the media house itself.
Yes, and their policies.
And there are some media houses that already have social media policies. Others don't have. Others might need help to develop those policies. Sure. If the Nation Media Group has no problem with Eric doing what he's doing, then surely, I mean, there will even be no complainant even if there was a case. But you see, this is an established organization that has been here for almost 60 years. Surely, I mean, the brains that are here have collective journalism experience of centuries. And therefore, if they come up with a policy and they implement it and they say we are comfortable with our policy, so be it. But there are others who have no policy at all, don't even know where to begin, don't even know what a policy looks like.
Yes.
In that case, they are free to consult. We will have a conversation. Let's have an industry-led decision making, but which will not interfere with the individual policies of the individual media houses.
Eric, from your position as KUJ Secretary General, do you hear complaints as to whether this will curtail someone's personal right to express themselves, especially if their views seem anti-establishment?
Yes, I think what happens is that it's a moral issue. And I think it's not grounded on any law or anything. It's just a moral issue that these journalists are supposed to command respect and has to be credible in whatever this journalist does. And that's why I was saying that the primary responsibility actually rests with the media houses, first of all, because they're the people who are supposed to enforce these regulations. Then, but what happens or what a journalist does after leaving a newsroom, that is private life. And I've been seen, like I was saying, that actually this debate has helped us a lot even to read more and find out what happens in other countries.
Yes.
That once you've left newsroom, and some of the things that Kerichi is saying, for example, wearing t-shirts bearing logos or colors of political parties, that cannot happen in newsroom. And I think we need to do that. But once you've left the newsroom and you're now in your house, that is now private life. Then it's upon you as an individual, as a journalist, that you need to continue commanding respect from the people who read your stories or who watch whatever you are doing. So that's where we need to have that clear distinction. That is why even some jurisdictions like in the US, and this debate was there in 2007, whereby it was discovered that some journalists had actually made contribution to campaign kitties of political parties. And so the debate was that when you do that, does that interfere with the respect and the credibility of this journalist? So that's where the debate should be. That as a journalist, you should know that it's your primary responsibility to continue commanding respect from your readers. So if you contradict yourself, that is a problem to you as an individual.
Right. So clearly, when they talk about Hassan, when the Media Council talks about those who are partisan and express views that are not in line with what they should be standing by as journalists, do you feel that there needs to be a rule that will guide or even punish someone who is openly for a particular party? Because that's what it is. But we're not calling names. We're not saying this is a person, this is a person. Does that affect his place as a professional journalist?
It certainly does. Mark, I was on one of the select committees sometimes, if I remember, that went into it, that assisted into drafting the Media Council Act, yes, as it is today. I remember I sat in that particular committee, and one of the chair of that committee was the Honorable Priscilla Nyokabi. And we had got a lot of discussions around those issues. And you'll notice that we deliberately annexed the code of ethics to be a schedule on in the statute of the Media Council. And in it, one of the code of ethics is that as a journalist, you should conduct yourself both in public and in private in a manner that maintains and sustains the honor of the profession. It's a good reason why we annexed that on the act. So that one must be able to take care of the issues that people are saying. What Eric is saying is that so long as you are now working, you can behave like this. Outside that, you can behave otherwise. So that one is the guiding principle of how you're supposed to behave yourself when you are writing the media and what you post on your called social media. So I agree with Kerich and I understand where Kerich is coming from, because he's a custodian and he's the enforcer of that code. So he's right by saying that that distinction must be done. Yeah. Now, let's look at this situation, Mark. I think the other day I saw, there are even others already declared, but if you read what they write, you can tell. Then let me speak like an editor, because
what they write on social media or what they write on their
even reflected in the
articles
in the newspapers, because in my years of experience I can tell that headline was written by Ohito, because I know his language and he's very good with words. And the reason when I was an editor active in the newsroom, I was the guru of writing headlines, because I knew how to choose the words, the brevity, so that it strikes, but you can tell who did it. So recently, I think it was in the Daily Nation, where Eric works, and you say this. You could see, I saw a headline saying that Raila's jab at Jubilee backfires.
Backfires, yes.
Get the point,
It's after Narok.
Yes, after Narok. No, you'll ask yourself, surely, at what point did the Nation Media Group, how did they come to the conclusion that that jab backfired? So you could tell that this is, and I can even have guess who must have written that headline in Daily Nation, because our colleague Zuma, I know, I even know the language they use. So that is a very biased.
Another one outside politics was Gor Mahia wins as AFC losses as usual.
Yes. You got the point. Those headlines, you can tell. Maybe the layman out there may not realize the biasness, but you could see that in that particular headline, somebody at Daily Nation, he's holding fort for Jubilee. He's trying to ensure that the landing is a bit soft for them when they have been hammered. Because if you follow the proceedings that happened in Tebama's burial, it looks like all of us know what happened, isn't it? So somebody need to take that from them. How did you make that decision? So I'm saying you must be able to be impartial, especially in Kenya. We are not yet at that position where media houses can take certain positions, because we are not, our politics is not based on ideology.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're probably laughing here about, let's give Marceline an opportunity to react here.
Yeah.
We're laughing about these headlines. Some of them can be funny, some of them not. We're moving into an election here. And when the viewer sees or hears that in many media houses, and it's not breaking news, Nation Media Group has once been told you're either establishment or anti-establishment, you're either for the opposition or not for the opposition. Does this worry you? And do you know of actual instances where it's been evident, especially in other election years, the biases?
Yeah, Kulunda has just talked about headlines where you see a sort of an expression of an opinion, and we are also talking about journalists, their possibility of freedom of expression, as well as the maintaining balance and trust. And yes, in many instances you find that some editorial pieces, some opinion pieces, less of it in news, but still, even sometimes in news, you find what is given prominence. As you have said, what is given prominence is something that is a little bit biased. So, and also the issue that he's talked about of social media. Yes, you have your freedom of expression and you have a right. But then when people are reading the newspapers and then perhaps they're also following you on Twitter and they begin to perceive that you have a certain slant and there is a certain expectation, it may not be about even the guidelines in your newsroom, but it's just about you and how your audiences perceive you. And so at some point we say that we talked about it earlier, and we said in the West, newspapers could decide that they are supporting a particular candidate or a party.
Yes.
But for us here, based on even the type of media ownership that we have, based on the kind of democracy that we have, and based even on our audiences, we may not be at that level whereby you can decide that we want to support this person. And so every newspaper strives sometimes to appear to be objective, but then sometimes just throw caution off and just decide that let us have this level of, let us have an opinion, let us have this kind of headline, let us have this kind of coverage. And you see it in television. You find we had the 2 rallies, and at some point I saw people complaining that
Jubilee one.
The light went off, and we also saw that one screen was big, another screen was small. And is that balanced? Is that objective, or is it biased? And it may look technical, but who is the person controlling that? Yes. And we can also ask ourselves, beyond even the journalists, the writers, it also extends even to the camera people. We are going beyond even to the sometimes we have, and I heard somebody admitting, and of course this is in the area of gender, yes, and saying there are jokes that we make, but it turns out that these jokes are perpetuating a certain issue. Yes. You know, they are perpetuating certain stereotypes, and it's the same in politics. Even with the host, the radio station hosts, the people who have discussions. So I do agree that we have to critically think about our freedom of expression, as well as think about the kind of trust and the kind of expectations that you, in your position that you hold, like you, Bakmasai, what is it that we have on you? What do you have on your Twitter? And at some level, if I see a certain slant, we expect you to have a certain level of balance, or to have some rationale, rather what we would call reasonable.
Yes.
Reasonable. You could be critiquing maybe the establishment, but how reasonable is it? You could be also highlighting something about the opposition.
Yes.
How reasonable is what you are portraying there?
Right.
Mark, I wanted to say this. Based on what Marcelina has said, there are some very critical issues that we must also ask ourselves. Number one, if you look at there's some media houses in this country, they are owned by politicians. And that is so obvious. There's some media houses owned by politicians. That politician will take a specific position when the elections come. Then number two, media houses also have commercial interest. They do business with political parties. Is that also going to interfere with their objectivity and impartiality? So that's why we are saying that we should not just focus on journalists alone. We should look at this thing as an industry whereby everybody has got a role, so that if you are clamping down on journalists that they have taken specific political positions, then what will happen when their media house, their employer, takes a different position? So that's why we need some sort of consultation, so that when we are coming out with this particular framework, everybody participates and everybody's interest and everybody's concerns are taken into consideration.
An important point you raised, because Victor Bwire is sitting on this particular panel, I think even last week, he said the same thing about ownership of media houses, and Kerich, I'm sure you'd champion this conversation, looking at the organizational structure first of all, because yes, you might go for that particular journalist, but really what dictates what goes out is what the employer would want, their agenda. Everyone has an agenda. Let's not kid ourselves here. And he said, this is Victor Bwire, that 3 families have over 30 media houses, own over 30 media houses, 3 families. So how can we expect to have any objectivity? So perhaps this conversation will introduce some form of regulation into that. But Ohito, earlier you had said, I mean, let's be serious. We're bright enough to be able to stand for a particular political party, but still be professional, especially when they say that you will still influence a particular story just because Ohito has a particular leaning to a certain party. Are we able to have that balance?
Where I work, decisions of editorial content are made by an editorial conference, which has several brains, good minds of good practice like myself, 21 years and above,
yes,
who can sift through copy and see innuendo, libel and defamation and leanings. So we try and remove that, and it's not possible. The story does not go through one person to let it pass. But on the flip side also, I want to ask Kerich, because there is one journalist who has been mentioned all over and who works under you as managing editor. How do you strike that balance of managing one reporter who is very active on social media platforms and with very open political decisions he has taken, and you have that chair as media council chair? Where does somebody bring the complaint, and where will you sit if he brings a complaint about your newspaper?
For purposes of the conversation, just clarify.
Well, there's a media council which has 8 board members. There is a complaints commission which has 7 members. The complaints commission handles all complaints.
Yes.
If any complaint comes about anybody, we receive it. We pass it onward to the complaints commission, which is independent of the media council, and they will listen to it. There'll be no conflict of interest because the media council does not handle such complaints. That's what the complaints commission is for.
Yes.
But you don't have a complaints commission in place now, and people are in a crisis, and which is why.
Yes, the complaints commission has, there's been a delay. There's been no complaints commission for the last 2.5 years.
Yes.
We have almost maybe 170 cases that are pending at the media council.
So it would be right to say over the 2 years that there have been some habits and tendencies that have gone unabated.
It's been a serious problem not having a complaints commission, and then we have been waiting for it to be gazetted. Remember, the law has changed. There is no more appointment of the media council by the CS or by anybody, and there is no. There is now a process where an independent panel advertises for the job,
Yes.
the independent panel has representatives from the Media Owners Association, the Kenya Editors Guild, the Union of Journalists, the Correspondents Association, even the universities have seats in that panel. They advertise, they receive applications, they shortlist, they interview, they give the CS one name. So when we were interviewed, they also did the interviews for the Complaints Commission. There has been some delay somewhere. We've been trying to find out why the Complaints Commission has not been gazetted.
Yes.
But that delay has, somehow continued to stop us from doing so many of the things that we need to do. But we are optimistic that we don't see any deliberate refusal to gazette it. We think maybe there's a technical hitch. But eventually, once it is gazetted, then there's so many things that it has to handle, including new cases.
Yes.
Mark, let's look at it. The Complaints Commission under the Media Council is the engine of that institution. If we don't have that body in place, which is why you're seeing people going to the courts, because that council cannot carry out its mandate properly.
Right.
And we are saying perhaps it's even time to relook at Media Council of Kenya. Is it serving the industry? Is it serving the professional it purports to regulate? Is it serving the industry in the progressive way that we'd want? Has it taken into account how the media, what I call digital Darwinism that has happened in the media in the recent years, so that we bring in regulations that are in tandem with the industry?
Yes.
Because if we don't have that Complaints Commission in place, I mean, there's no need of even having the Media Council just to give out badges. Badges can be done by a watchman on River Road at 200 bob.
You remember, let me give Eric a chance.
Let me say this. And actually, that's why I was having issues with the Media Council, because the issue that's at the core of the operations of the Media Council is the Complaints Commission. And I was expecting that we will see the board now, given that the board is in place, coming out and now demanding and also putting pressure on them, on the government, to ensure that these names are gazetted and we have the Complaints Commission, so that they can deal with the core issues that actually everybody is complaining about in the media industry. Right now, you can see 2 weeks ago, there were some very hefty awards, defamation awards that were given by the courts. And actually, this is happening because the Complaints Commission has not been in operation. So, to the Media Council, and that's why the reason why I'm also taking a different position is probably they think that the journalists are now becoming the easy targets, so that they don't want to deal with the real issues that are actually going to make the Media Council relevant, and targeting the soft targets, which are journalists. So that's why we are saying that the Media Council, there are very critical issues that the council needs to start addressing, other than trying to look for the soft targets.
For your information, nobody is precluded from going to the High Court, even if there was a Complaints Commission in existence. People can still go straight to the High Court. We would want to encourage people to use the Complaints Commission. But there is one aspect of the Complaints Commission that makes it weak, which is the fact that it cannot give an injunction. So you find a situation where somebody says, you have defamed me, please stop as we talk. Then you write another story. And if they go to court, that is what is called aggravated defamation, where you are doing a defamation and you continue with it. So somebody can go to the High Court, get an injunction to prevent NMG from writing any other story about him. The Media Council and the Complaints Commission has no power to issue any such injunction. So let's be clear. It is not an issue of there not being a Complaints Commission that people are going to court about. They can still go to court at any time. The problem is there has been no Complaints Commission. There have been interviews done. We are waiting. When you say put pressure on the government to gazette, I mean, what pressure are we talking about? We have to see what end result do we want to achieve, what is the best way to achieve it. If diplomacy is the best way, we use it.
I guess they're asking
there's a reason why. First of all, we must understand the legal status of the Complaints Commission. The Complaints Commission is not a court. It is what we call, it falls under what we call alternative dispute resolution. We don't go to the Complaints Commission to do litigation.
Yes.
Because the reason why we have got ADR, or alternative dispute resolution, is to avoid litigation. So we cannot expect the council, the Complaints Commission, to have powers to issue injunction, because that will convert it into a court, and that will be.
Let me put it there so that I'm not
Nonetheless,
misunderstood. Because what I'm saying is this: I'm not saying that the Complaints Commission is supposed to act like as a court. I know that. What I'm saying that if we had a Complaints Commission that is operating, it will be able to save us some of these cases that are taken to court, so that we can look at alternative dispute resolution.
And be able to handle
that's what I'm
cases.
talking about. And now I was also happy that if Kerichi is now able to identify the gaps that are there, call the stakeholders. Let's see if we need to change the law so that we can also try to deal with some of the issues.
Marceline has
Yeah,
been talking about.
and don't forget the aspect of self-regulation, that through Media Council, we as an industry, we are able to regulate ourselves. In the absence of that, then you now have the pending cases and you have people going to court, because otherwise people now don't have a space by which they can come and we ourselves can say, can you call me to the Media Council, and I say, I mean, I become answerable to what I've written about.
I really like the proposals
Chair, before you respond, could you also just take us through, as key stakeholders, how many complaints are pending? How many are filed on a regular basis, so that we get a sense of where the industry is going, and if at all the Media Council of Kenya is doing its work and earning the taxpayers' money in the right way?
And I think
he mentioned over 100 cases.
I think Rich has got his work well cut out.
Yeah,
sure. So at least we can see, we are happy. Myself, I'm happy that at least for the second time, the chair of the council is a media practitioner. So he understands the nuts and bolts of media. So he can advise the rest of the people who are non-media professionals, that council. I think the next thing that you should do, Kerichi, is now to begin popularizing the essence of the commission, so that we avoid litigation. Litigation is, somebody said that litigation is like a machine. When you go in as a pig, you come out as a sausage. So either way, it's not good. So we must encourage people to go to the complaints commission.
That is why we have
some of the complaints. You'll notice that some of the issues that take people to litigation, maybe somebody just wanted an apology from that particular media house, which can be mediated.
That is why we are having the inauguration on Thursday. Part of it is to tell the public, you know, the Media Council is accountable to the public, actually, not even to media houses or to anybody.
Exactly.
That we are here, the Media Council is back, the Complaints Commission is back when it will be gazetted, and please bring your complaints here. We have the power to resolve these issues. As you say, sometimes somebody just wants to sit across from a journalist and say, I spoke to you, I told you to hold this story for one more day so that I could give you my comment, you didn't give me my chance. So he wants to, you know, to ventilate and express what he has to say. So we really are worried. The libel awards that are being given are really a threat to the media. There are many media houses, if they were told to pay 20 million shillings, would fold up.
Sure.
You know, and you know, it's the job of the part of the mandate of the Media Council to protect media.
That is the reason why, actually, when we are having actually the reason why we've not had the Media Council board and the Complaints Commission for a very long time is because you are in court as the stakeholders, and there are some things we are contesting. And some of the things we are contesting was about the kicker had stipulated that these hefty fines of 20 million to media houses. So that's why now that we've now fought and we've defended the media, the council very well, then we expect now the council now to move with the speed and make sure that it can now start dealing with these cases. And that's what we are saying.
Right, and there's something, well, there's some noise here if you're picking that up, but there's something I needed to revisit from the past. The noise signifies that the construction work for overnight has started, so we need to wrap things up here. But remember that breakfast meeting that was held at State House with editors? Well, this was mid-July 2013, thereabouts. It had never happened before, and of course, though this was 3 years ago, it still haunts many an editor and journalist. It was during the first few months of the Jubilee government, and the invitation was greeted with some skepticism. And however, at least 100 journalists honored the invitation to hear what the government had to say about its commitment to ensure freedom of media. And the breakfast had its light moments where some even quipped about hoping to have gotten jobs in the communications department of State House, but this was not a laughing matter to others. I was hoping that the clips would be playing of what was happening at State House in July 2013, but we've been a bit late in doing that. But I want to ask Ohito, you know, some people say The rain started beating us when we went and started eating with the government. And I think you joked at one point there when you were responding or giving a question that you were hoping for a job within State House or what have you. But, you know, being bosom buddies with the government, do you think this is what is punishing us in terms of objectivity and having a blurred vision of how to set the establishment and put it on account?
Not really. If you look at civilized states where the media has lived for thousands of years, the US, for example, there are resident correspondents who work from White House. Every single day they wake up, they go and work from State House. They are in contact with Michelle, the children, the president himself, and the deputy president.
Right.
If you go to 10 Downing Street, the UK, it's only the small mindsets who have not read about how media operates that have that warped thinking that if you go to White House, how can a one-day tea event of 2 hours convert a mind of a journalist of 21 years standing? It's impossible.
Right.
I mean, it's very myopic to argue that way. And we would be reporting this country better if we had accredited resident State House reporters. But the problem is we've had State House saying we want to influence who comes to sit from here, and that has run us into problem. Right. If good media houses would nominate credible, well-trained journalists who are qualified to go and report from there, they would not even report biases that are leaning towards the state.
Right.
They'll put them in real, fair balance, saying, but the opposition also says this.
Right.
You know, when the Kika bill came to Parliament, and you know, the media was complaining about some of the clauses in it, and many people started saying, you know, you drank tea, now you're paying the bill. And you know, it became a big issue. And in my mind, it's if I'm invited anywhere, I will go. As a journalist, there is no place that is out of bounds for me.
Yes.
If I'm invited to State House tomorrow, I will take my group of journalists and we go and listen to what is being said. You cannot say that because you went and took breakfast, from then on you have become soft and you do no longer criticize government and so on. You know, there are people who travel with Obama. When Obama came here, he had journalists accompanying him. And we have even been trying to tell our very own State House that when the president goes to Morocco, we don't want your PSCU people to send us their version. Why don't you allow us to send our own report? Sure. Who will file his own thing? You remember when we were in Ethiopia and the PSCU sent us a misleading statement about ICC. And because we didn't have anybody there, we ran it and then realized later that we had been misled. And then we became more careful after that. Right. So we want to have a press team in, you know, in the White State House. If Orange wants to accredit journalists, we will send them there. Sure. If the president wants to travel with journalists, we will send them there. There is no issue.
I think I like what Ohito and Kerich have said, and setting the record straight. But and I agree with you. But the perception out there from that breakfast might be a little bit different, and so media has to work on changing. What is the perception out there? The perception is that the journalists were there. It impacted on their objectivity. And
we went soft.
You know, first of all, this is a new government.
They were confronted with the charm of the...
No, this is not the old governments where you used to hear people walk in and walk out with briefcases of money. There was no such thing. And a journalist of long standing cannot be mesmerized by anything. Yeah. But you cannot appear before...
But Maga, I think where the problem was, and I think, first of all, I agree with Charles and David that journalists are allowed to meet anybody. And I think actually that's where this big debate began, that there are some journalists who are seen meeting leaders of opposition, and therefore people thought that they are not going to be objective. But having said that, I agree journalists are allowed and will continue meeting everybody, including the president, going to State House, going to meetings. However, I think where people were disappointed, I think at some point the editors were carried away. to the extent some of them were now asking for jobs.
I agree.
And I think that is where the problem began, whereby editors were now asking for jobs, that if there's something, please also don't forget us.
Honestly,
and I think once that was aired, and I think that's where now that we lost the trust.
But you failed to see the light in that
exactly,
moment.
But you see, of course, probably the context under which whoever said that.
You said something.
Yes. And I think that's where, but you see, for somebody who is watching and sees an editor telling the president that if there are jobs, please don't forget us. And I think that's where we lost it.
Right. Mark, honestly speaking, from where I sit, I must agree that we mismanaged that visit to State House. Because knowing the nature of our country, isn't it? I must blame we journalists about that particular visit. First of all, we chose to, in good faith, we chose to run it live, all right? And that's why all these issues started. So we should have planned it in a better way, so that at least we are the ones who are supposed to be on top of things, because people have Kenyans have placed us on a certain pedestal. So the way we handled ourselves and the way we planned the visit, anyway, the visit was a bit haphazard, you understand. So we were doing it in good faith.
It was the first time, anyway.
Yeah, we were doing it in good faith.
And the last time.
But yes, but we managed it. We managed it poorly. Nonetheless, colleagues are right. The history of journalism, we just go back itself. We know that journalism started from the seats by being appendages of the seats of power. If you remember the famous speech by Sir Edmund Burke in 1796, when they gave us the word, the House of Commons, and over yonder sits the fourth estate, because historically the media was part and parcel of the House of Commons. So that's where we started. So at least we should have managed it properly. That one I can agree, and many of us who know what transpired, because it looks like we were lured, and then from that time we have never recovered. And it was interesting that on the same day, the president used the opportunity to announce his new
State House Communications.
A former respected journalist.
Well, there's a reason why I brought that up, and it's in our interaction with either government, with opposition, whether there's a thin line that we should not cross and where we should draw the line. But now, the last comments, I'm really out of time here. My director wants to kick me out. I'll start with you. And Kerisha, I'd want you, when it gets to you, to tell us if there's anything that can be done now to those who are either being partisan, or if there's any action that can really be taken. And then now the recommendations and suggestions as we go up the panel.
Yeah, I think for us, we go the direction of looking at guidelines of how we should participate, including even journalists, the ones who are doing consultancy for political parties. We don't want to deny them the chance to earn money. We always talk of different streams of income. And then I'm happy that Media Council is back on board, because some of these standards that we are saying are lacking engagement on social media. If the Media Council was operating at the level at which it's supposed to be operating, then most of these standards would have already been set. Yes. So there's a lot of backlog of work that lies ahead for us to partner with them as stakeholders.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Hassan, Claude?
I would say that the law might be lenient on journalists. They can allow you to play double. But as a matter of equity, if you are a journalist and are holding that important position, please, if you want to go into politics, quit. Just leave that job, let somebody else do it. There is, and I want to emphasize on a very good principle of equity, which in Latin says, nemo judex in causa sua, meaning no man shall be judged in his own cause. If Ohito is sitting there as an editor, passing harsh judgment on other politicians, yet himself, he has got political ambitions that he's sitting there, that's not fair. He will be a judge in his own cause.
All right. As KJ, are you still telling Media Council to withdraw?
What I'll tell the Media Council is that they need consultations. Let us come up with a proper framework, not knee-jerk reaction, not issuing threats through press releases that you are going to do ABCD if you do not, if you declare your interest to join politics. So what we want, please, Media Council, we will support you. We've supported you before. Please come up with a clear framework that is going not to be used in towards 2017 elections, but even for future elections, whereby we've now developed a tradition that is known that in the media, this is how it's supposed to happen in an election year. Then I think last one, I also want to report that I think there's some good news for journalists. Those journalists who are shown here last week, those guards who are shown here last week, clobbering journalists, we are pursuing them. I'm told they have gone under, and we're still pursuing them. We'll get some, we're trying to see if we can get some court orders so that Kakuzi can be compelled to produce them in court so that they can face justice.
Because it says that they've disappeared.
Yes.
All right, that's quite questionable.
Right, so to answer your question about the media...
let me just give you the three so that you can respond as you close. Will you withdraw? Are there any actions that you can take? And is there any timeline that can advise a journalist who wants to run for office? Are there guidelines?
Okay. We shall not withdraw anything. However, we need to have more of such conversations that we've had. There's been, like I said, a lot of debate.
Yes.
I think Eric here has even been brought to life by the Media Council press conference. I think everybody has become so active. And personally, I'm happy that we've had all these conversations. Secondly, it is very good that the Media Council is back. It's a good thing. It is going to help the industry move forward. We have a lot we want to do. Number three, I want us to have a lot of forums to thrash out these and many other issues. There is no forum that brings together media practitioners and stakeholders. When the Kika bill was being discussed, the media owners would sit in their offices discussing. Of course, for the media owners, their primary interest is their revenue and profit. Then the editors would sit on their side and say, after all, we are the ones who decide what goes into the newspaper. The journalists, all they want is better welfare, better remuneration. But no point do these people come together and say, what affects the industry? But we have new people coming to newsrooms. We don't know how they are being trained. You go to a press conference. At the end of it, nobody's asking any question, and you're wondering what's going on. Not the Media Council press conference. But so I think it is important to sit down and have these conversations amongst ourselves. Is there fairness? Are we drifting in whichever direction? So if the Law Society of Kenya can have a monthly lunch, why can't the media stakeholders have a monthly lunch as well to discuss issues that are pertinent to them? ISPAC has an annual gathering of accountants. Why can't we have ours? So I think the more we create these forums, the more we'll have more consultations amongst ourselves, therefore move forward in agreement.
But I still need to know, are there any journalists who will be deregistered, and are there guidelines?
No. One of the key mandates of the Media Council is to actually protect journalists.
Okay.
And deregistering a journalist would be the absolute last resort. I mean, that's not something we would rush to do. We would seek other alternatives. We are not about to deregister.
Are there guidelines?
We don't even have the mandate.
Yes.
Are there guidelines?
Yes, we do have the mandate, Kulundu, just for your position. No, whichever grounds, that is arguable. But the Media Council has the mandate to register, to keep a register, to offer accreditation. So whether there are grounds or not and the consequences, that's different. But we do have that.
Are there guidelines for those who want to pursue politics?
Yes, there is no. Actually, there are no guidelines. There is a guideline on coverage of politics, independence and fairness. But the issue of people contesting, that's a very new field that we then need to sit down together as an industry and say, then how do we deal with this?
Even social media.
So withdraw your statement.
Ohito, you say the people have spoken.
You can invoke the power.
Mark, you normally run a very organized panel.
This is part two of the conversation. Ohito, you said the people have spoken. How do you speak in response, in your place as an editor, in response to what we've been talking about, your final position?
First things first, Media Council of Kenya has been running low on public confidence and on media confidence, the practitioners' confidence. This is an institution that was modeled to try and play a very critical role in society. I'm glad Kirich took that office, and at least he didn't find a way of launching himself apart from the Kanu-like statement he made last week, which I have no problems with. But we are here to give him a lot of support. We will railroad him where he attempts to get out of the line, and we will not allow him to usurp some imaginary unconstitutional and legal powers. We want an active media council that is respected across by consumers of content from media houses as well as practicing professionals. We must do structured dialogue, not amorphous conferencing in breakfast places and so on, and you think you've worked. And we need also Media Council of Kenya to report to the public and to the industry what they have been doing over time. There are so many good brains who are watching, and I can see the feedback from professors of the University of Nairobi School of Journalism and many others, that there is time to have structured dialogue so that we can have an industry that serves the interest of this nation. Elections are very cagey, emotions can be very high. We were blamed in 2007. We must not get there. We must get it right this time around.
Thank you very much, David, Charles, Eric, Hassan, and also Marceline, for your time and your thoughts here on Press Pass. We could go on. As you see, part 2 is about to begin. But let me get you loosened up a bit with some laughter from Kinyanjui's piece. And you have heard the president say that newspapers are good for wrapping meat. Well, of late, there has been a lot of talk in the political circles of who is eating meat and who is salivating over the same. Perhaps the president's move to drop by for some nyama choma at Kenyatta Market was an attempt to emphasize who is eating and who is salivating over the same. Kinyanjui's report gives some perspective. Enjoy this as we end Press Pass. Thank you for watching.
The Kenyan political arena is lit, and the focus now seems to be the opponent's teeth. Keep them on diet just so they don't get to eat meat.
Watu waelezwe kumeza mate sio kukula nyama.
Following these remarks by the president, Guesswork has launched a meteorologist department to spearhead a research on Kenyans' love for meat. And to seek interpretation of what the head of state meant about what they eat. Its speech in Raymond's language, since the opposition also have their own ideas.
Nikisema nyama nyama nyama, mnasema nyama. Nyama nyama nyama. Nyama nyama nyama. Nyama ya Eurobond. Nyama ya Eurobond. Ya SGR. Ya SGR. Utapiga hiyo nyama kwa mdomo yako.
The election deal between Kenyans and the Jubilee government was the promise to help Kenyans make ends meet. Could it be that that is the meat they are eating? Or the president simply reiterated the Kenyan political culture of it is our turn to eat.
Wenzetu endeleeni kumeza mate, lakini nyama tutakula. Tuendelee.
These statements made it to today's newspaper, but it is not certain if Kenyans got the message because
vile nilisema ya kwamba gazeti ni ya kufunga nyama ni sawa.
Interestingly, after stumbling upon an ancient reading techniques, that is, boiling books and drinking the soup, same way you can get news by eating meat that was initially wrapped in a newspaper. Who are we to judge the president for loving meat? We Kenyans ourselves have had our moments.
Tunashapen mama knife zetu, tunajiandaa kwa kukuchinja rao. Hii ndio swag ya hapa mazi.
Now that protein has been politicized, the country is looking forward to a nutritious face-off as long as it is to the benefit of Kenyans. Representing the Guesswork fraternity on Press Pass, it is the one and only King.